Hey there. So glad you are with us this week to listen in on my conversation with Dr. Alice Fong. She's a naturopathic doctor specializing in issues arising from stress and anxiety. She works with her patients online and shares information with corporate teams and helps share the ways, the tools, and the techniques that you can use to support your health, boost your resilience, and become more resistant to stress and anxiety. I know you're going to get a lot of great information from this talk today. Enjoy.
Hey there, friends. Are you looking for tools to resolve stress, reliable information to support your whole health, tips to help you motivate yourself, and identify when motivation is fading before it happens, implementation, accountability, and someone to remind you to celebrate even the small successes, where you could find tools you can use and accountability in a community that cheers you on, where information about health trends and lifestyle is reliable and straightforward. I know that you have what it takes to up-level your health habits and restore your resilience. You just might need a boost to start building momentum. I've designed a membership where you can choose the level of support you'd like to get every month, whether it's tuning in to connect with like-minded change makers or getting personalized support with one-on-one coaching to help you chart your path to success. Check out the link for the Velocity membership at happifiedlife.com. Special pre-launch pricing is now available for premium support, but you can jump in for free if you just want to test the waters. I look forward to seeing you inside. Living in a stressful world doesn't mean you have to give up on happiness. Instead, you can shift your perspective of stress and discover how to live your life in flow. Welcome to Happified. I'm your host, Susi Vine. Join me for inspiration and interviews with folks who are shining their light in the world in the areas of positive mindset, health, and wellness. I'm so happy to have you here.
Welcome back. I'm so excited to have you with me this week. I'm introduce you to Dr. Alice Fong. She is a naturopathic doctor here in California. So sometimes we're reaching around the globe to connect with my guests, and sometimes they're just right up the state a little bit. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Alice. She is a naturopathic doctor, also known as the virtual stress doc, and she helps busy professionals break free from stress, anxiety, and burnout without having to quit their jobs using a 5-step holistic approach. She's the founder of Amour Wellness, and her mission is to help people discover self-love and happiness. She speaks around the US and now I'm sure has been seen around the world to groups small and large about resolving the negative effects of stress and promoting resilience, sharing information with the public, corporations, and healthcare providers. Because this is a message that we are getting out from the more holistic space. I think it's felt a little bit more woo. I embrace that word to be really digging into our emotions and stress. And now we're recognizing just how important it is to our holistic wellness. So thank you, Dr. Alice, for making time to join me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Susie. It's a pleasure to be here.
So we were comparing notes a few minutes ago about the different places where we've lived. And so you studied at Bastyr University in Seattle, Kenmore, I think, officially,
yes, that's right.
in the area. And it was something that I was familiar when I was there working in Seattle and had the good luck to go to their student clinic. So could you tell our listeners who aren't familiar with the difference between naturopathic doctor and the MD training, what your experience was like there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it is a 4-year medical program to become a naturopathic doctor. And you do have to get your pre-med requirements from an undergraduate program. And the first 2 years of our medical program is relatively similar to conventional medical school, in that we have to learn our basic sciences, anatomy, physiology, pathology, just because we need to be able to diagnose properly. It's obviously very important for us to be able to address the root cause. It's really in the second 2 years is where we kind of diverge and really focus on treating the whole person and addressing the root cause rather than putting a pharmaceutical Band-Aid on the problem. It's not that I'm against pharmaceuticals by any means. There's definitely a time and place and need for it, depending on the severity and the condition that you're dealing with. But I don't think it should be our go-to response to everything and our first thing that we go to every time. There's so many other things that we can do, especially with nutrition. I think should be the foundation of health. We got to look at that. So we put a lot of emphasis in our education on nutrition and lifestyle medicine, prevention, dealing with stress management. We put a lot of training into counseling and all sorts of tools to just help find more natural solutions for people, as well as like exploring, getting to the source of the underlying condition so we can resolve it rather than just kind of temporarily suppress the symptoms. And sometimes that's necessary if it's really bad, but we want to get to the source of the problem.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point for people to be aware of, is that prescriptions do have their time and place, and they can really bring down an acute situation that's really got someone sidelined, so that they can at least be functioning. The trick is to be able to get to the root cause, even, after we've been suppressing some of those symptoms. So it's nice to be working with someone with a more holistic approach before we're well into pharmaceutical intervention, so that we can still kind of see how it's showing up. I tell people that I'm working with that the body issues requests for only so long, and then it starts issuing demands.
Definitely.
So how do you see people showing up or experiencing the impact of stress? Do they come in and they say, I feel stressed and it's an emotional situation? Or do you see physical situations that are really common in this?
Yeah, well, as a stress doctor, I'm always asking about their stress levels and what's going on in their life situation and circumstances. What's their work situation? What's their home life situation, their relationship status, all of those things that can be stressors in people's lives. And I do usually attract people that are dealing with high levels of stress and anxiety specifically. And stress and anxiety, some people can have stress without anxiety. Some people can have anxiety without stress. But I see a lot of it playing out in a very similar way physiologically in our bodies. And so when people are dealing with prolonged stress, that can manifest in a lot of physical symptoms. And so I do have a lot of patients that come in that are, stress is a big thing, but that's not necessarily the thing that they came in for. They want to address their migraine. They want to address their digestive issues. They want to lower their blood pressure. And that's all important. And stress can be a major contributing factor, or maybe even the cause of those conditions. So it's like, I can do natural things for it. I'll always address the nutrition, lifestyle, but we gotta manage that stress. That's gotta be key. And that's for a lot of different health conditions.
Yes, so true. And I'll just go ahead and we'll sidebar and say, even though we're talking with a doctor today, these are general recommendations and experiences. By no means is there any diagnosing or prescribing going on. You need to connect with a doctor in order to do this. And Dr. Alice does work online. So you can reach out to her through her website, which is going to be linked in the show notes.
Yes, this is totally for educational purposes. Obviously, I need to interact with you and your case and understand the situation, because it's almost like figuring out a puzzle. Like I'm a detective trying to solve a mystery. And so I need to know what your case is and understand it to be able to resolve it. You can't just, one solution for one person might work great, but that same solution for another person with the same problem might not work as well. So we have to look at lab work. We got to look at the stressors you're dealing with in your life. Got to look at a lot of different factors so we can get to the source of the issue.
And I think that's a really important thing to recognize too, is that, people, when they come to see you or talk with you, meet you online, might not understand what kind of an appointment they're getting into. This isn't your 7-minute or on a good day, 20-minute visit that you would have with a medical doctor, but with the naturopathic doctor, there's a lot of questions you might not be expecting to have to answer.
So many questions. Pretty long visit. Usually most naturopathic doctors' first visit are 60 to 90 minutes typically. So it's a lot of time because we want to know the full picture. And rather than just give you a pill and just send you on your way, which is, that helps, but that doesn't get to the source of the problems.
Right. And so I think that nutrition is a really important thing to bring into the conversation. And it's funny, I almost struggle with how to talk to it every time because I hate to say diet, because diet is
Oh, me too.
such a bad angle on it, but it's the way in which we eat.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in the last year with life being exceptionally stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And in my experience, in the numbers that I've seen, I was surprised really early on in this time of working from home that people really quickly jumped up to working an extra 3 hours per day on average, which just
Wow.
blew my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so we like to think, well, we're not commuting. Don't we have more time to cook at home? But I think that our healthy habits have slipped over the last year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what are some issues or commonalities that you see in the way that people are eating that are making them maybe more susceptible to having issues with stress?
Yeah. So as far as nutrition, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't like to use the word diet because it's kind of like, I think in people's mind, they associate with like a temporary thing. I'll just do this diet temporarily. And then once I'm done, then I'll get back to eating how I want to eat. And that doesn't really work because it's all about long-term solutions and developing that. And yeah, what you put in your body makes a huge difference in how you feel and how you function. And so what I do see a lot, I actually didn't know that statistic about people working 3 hours more, but I was just wondering in my brain, is that because there's a lot of stay-at-home parents, so they're not as productive with their work, so they end up having to work way later into the night because they're trying to homeschool and deal with that. Maybe that might be part of it.
I feel like it's an aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a huge aspect, which is hugely stressful. And one of the things I always say, and I tell all my patients, is that, we can't change the stressors in our life, but we can change how we respond to stress and learn to respond in a healthier way. And there's so many tools that we can do. And one of those is what we put in our bodies, what we eat. And nutritionally, it is common and normal when we're stressed to go to like the junk and the processed food, something quick and convenient. And there's a lot of negative health impacts, as well as that doesn't help your stress situation because of the sugar and the processed foods. They make you crave more sugar and more processed foods, and then it's this vicious cycle, and that doesn't support like your normal healthy gut flora, and there's a lot of negative health impacts from that. And so it's just like this vicious cycle that doesn't relieve your stress. It's just kind of like a coping mechanism temporarily, but not a healthy one to do. And it's okay to do it once in a while. I don't want to make you feel bad or wrong if you're eating terribly, but it's just like, okay, what can we do to like slowly implement some vegetables in the diet? Like maybe those are your go-to snacks when you're stressed. Filling your fridge with quality foods that are whole non-processed foods. That's really important. Not surrounding yourself. Like for me, I'm guilty of falling off the wagon all the time. If it's in my presence, if there's like a box of cookies in the house, they will be eaten. So I cannot bring them in the house because they will be destroyed. And so it's really creating an environment that supports those healthy habits and having a supportive network, hopefully your family. But if it's not your family, maybe you got to seek support outside of your family. Maybe it's a doctor, maybe it's a weight loss support group or coach or whatever that might be. I think it's just looking at what else you can do to help set you up for success.
Yes, I think that's so important. Thank you for speaking to that because I'm the same way. If I have the sweets, I mean, I'm kind of infamous for having a sweet tooth amongst my friends. And so I try not to bring it into the house. If I do, I know that that's where I'm going to be for that week. I need to bring some other alternatives in with it to try to stretch it out or portion it out into servings, and keep the rest in the freezer. I mean, there are ways. And when we're honest with ourselves and recognize like, okay, I'm comfort eating right now, rather than letting it be the habit and not having the awareness to say, oh, I could do better for myself. I deserve to do better for myself. Right. No one else is going to take that stand. So it's up to us.
Yeah. And I think it's also reframing. It's definitely a mindset thing too. And just thinking, you think in your brain that like, oh, if I go get takeout, that'll be faster than me prepping a whole meal. But if you actually think about like time wise, it's like if you just spend an hour or two meal prepping like 10 meals over the weekend, so then you just grab a meal from your fridge and go, that's way faster than like hopping in your car, getting some takeout or fast food and then coming back home. Like you would save more time in that sense if you plan it correctly.
Yeah. And I'm making a movement for meal prep or that kind of attention to what you're going to eat for the week being, maybe that's a form of self-care that makes more sense to you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to do that, because when I don't, I will just do what I feel like eating. And that's not always good when you're to the store and you're hungry and you're like, oh, these cookies sound delicious, or this pizza sounds fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and like you say too, I mean, stress spikes those cravings for exactly the foods that aren't really going to nourish us. So I
Yeah.
definitely have been there and can relate to that. What else do you recommend to your patients? I mean, exercise can be hard too. Inertia is a
Yeah.
hard force to change.
Mhm.
So are there ways in which you encourage them to keep on building on or moving in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's building healthy habits is like, people know what they need to do, but they struggle with the doing of what they know to do. And this is what I see all the time. And so that's why I do like a mindfulness mindset piece in my program, because that's so important, and like doing the things you know to do. And for exercise, one of my recommendations is like, if you're not doing any right now, just start small, to not set yourself like to make it seem like an overwhelming task. And you might find, I'll be honest, I'll share from my own experience. I'm a busy person. I tend to be. I went into stress because I've often dealing with stress in my life and anxiety I've dealt with. But I've learned a lot of tools along the way. But I used to be that person that was like, oh, I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to meal prep. I'm too busy. I got all these things I got to get done. But when I actually did this practice of just, yeah, I had a crazy busy schedule, but I decided to get in a habit of like starting small. I would work out for just like 10 minutes a day, a quick home workout, the 7-minute workout app. It's great. And then I would just meditate for 5 minutes a day. And I used to be like, yeah, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. But when I did that regularly for like 3 weeks solid, I was way more productive. I was way more focused. I got way more done. I performed at a higher level. I had better energy. I just felt good. But then when I fell off the wagon, this was around Thanksgiving, I fell off the wagon because of holidays. That'll happen. I noticed just like a huge drop in my mood. I was just like depressed for no reason. And I didn't understand why. And I was like, oh, I stopped doing my healthy habits, and like meditating and exercise. I know for me, I used to put it as a lower priority because I was like, oh, these work is way more important, or these deadlines are way more important. But now I feel like I got to put myself first. And that includes my well-being. So exercise, sleeping, meditating, my eating, all of those things are my priority. I work out 4 or 5 days a week for an hour. And I'm like, things can wait. I can't, like, I will get more done if I exercise first versus like waiting till the end of the day and like, oh, if I have time, maybe I'll get a workout in, because you will probably be like, oh, too tired. I can't do it. So yeah, it's just like, maybe you have to trick your brain a little bit, be like, okay, maybe don't think you have to like spend an hour every day when you do a workout. Maybe it's just like a 5-minute workout. You can do 20 push-ups and 20 like sit-ups. That's a few minutes. That's a start. And then when you feel comfortable and you're consistent with that, then you can try to build up from there. Maybe get to 10 minutes. So doing some activity will actually get you the energy boost and help you manage your stress and actually feel more focused and productive. So it's kind of like you got to slow down sometimes to be able to speed up.
Yes. And I love everything that you just said. I mean, I'm all on board with everything we've talked about so far, but that's 12 minutes. I'm not a math whiz, but the 7-minute app is a big thumbs up in my book as well.
I did that one.
And then 5 minutes to meditate, 12 minutes. If we don't deserve that time for ourselves, right? How can we be showing up and serving the work, the people that we want to in our lives? So we deserve to make ourselves and our well-being a priority. 12 minutes.
Yes. And it's like, those are productive things. Like somehow you have time to like scroll on your social media app for several minutes or get sucked into a YouTube black hole. So it's just like, you gotta be straight and authentic with yourself when you're like making the excuse, I don't have time. Because if you make it a priority, you can make the time for it.
Absolutely. And the impact is, it's one of those things that's a little sneaky. So I love that you had that experience, that when you let that habit slip, you recognize like, what is missing? Where did my focus go? Like, it doesn't make sense that carving out that time to not, air quotes, be productive is going to help you but it does. It makes such a big difference. It boosts your mood, it improves your focus, it helps your brain be more clear.
Mhm.
All of those impacts are just so supportive. So if, any more justification needed, then that little improvement in clarity is definitely worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you mentioned briefly sleep too. And I think that's what I hear the most often that people struggle with, in addition to, I wish there was more time in the day. But to your point, I mean, what are we doing with our time, right? But so many people struggle with sleep. Are there some things that you find are really supportive, in particular for the patients that you've recommended or heard work for them?
Yeah, I always talk about creating a sleep routine and creating healthy habits around your sleep, because that's really going to promote sleep quality. And to developing a mindfulness practice is to have better sleep, so you can train your body to relax and settle down for bed, instead of going and I always see the racing brain all the time, and they're go go go, and then they have bad sleep, and then they wake up feeling crappy, and then it's like go go go, and then they're just slowly getting depleted over the time, and then they're not really that productive, they're not that focused, they're frazzled mess. And so it's just like, for me, like one of the lessons that I learned I went to med school over a decade ago, how to learn this lesson the hard way was I was like, my second quarter of med school, my first year, I had 9 finals. And I was always thinking, you have to kind of get out of that mindset, like, oh, I got to do as much as possible to be able to do the best that I can. But sometimes sleep is actually a bigger priority. So that second quarter, I would get 4 hours of sleep a night. I'd survive off Rockstar energy drinks, thinking I got to study as much as possible, cram as much knowledge, because I got 9 finals into my brain. And what ended up happening was that I didn't do that great on my finals. I got sick for a week after and spent the whole spring break in bed. And it just made me realize that wasn't really, me studying late into the night when my brain's not functioning that well is not very productive. It'd be more productive for me and my performance if I got sleep. So the next quarter, I really prioritized sleep to make sure that it was essential. Like no studying past 10 p.m. That's a deal breaker. That's what I decided. And I'd eat well, meditate, like all the things to support my well-being. I did infinitely better on my finals and finished out the school year strong. So I was just like, okay, I learned well over a decade ago. It's like, oh, I got to take care of me for me to actually get the results that I want. So it's not just about like doing as much as possible. It's about being like efficient with your time, and sleeping is super important. So some of the things that I do is I use sleep music. That kind of gets my brain into a nice relaxed state. I turn it on. It's just kind of like playing in the background. I meditate regularly. I try to go to bed consistently and shut down my devices before. I'm guilty sometimes. I'm not so great at that, but it's hard sometimes. But I'm usually a pretty good sleeper. I have a Fitbit watch, the Versa, and so that helps track my sleep. I usually score in the high 80s, thankfully. Although my partner, he's not a great sleeper, so he can mess my score up. but I'm helping him improve his sleep by getting him more into meditation. And the other thing I'm not really that great at, but another recommendation that I've heard and I've tried, I'm just not consistent with it, is like doing the aromatherapy diffuser, because like the olfactory response is like you smell it and that triggers your brain to get ready for sleep. I usually recommend doing like I have a 6-step breathing exercise on my YouTube channel that I recommend to help your body kind of quick start into that parasympathetic nervous system. So that's one of the things I recommend for my patients as well. So there's a lot of things you can do, but the real thing, the hard thing, is building that habit in the routine.
Awesome. I'm going to try to find that video and we'll link that in the show notes, because I think that breath work is so powerful. And I mean, we are able to physically bring ourselves out of a stress response just by the way that we can work with our breath. So thanks for sharing that. That sounds like a really exciting one to check out.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the bedtime ritual is super supportive. One essential oil that I like that a lot of people might not think of. I mean, people think of drinking chamomile tea, but don't think of it as an essential oil. But lavender doesn't appeal to everyone, and Roman chamomile almost smells like apples to me. So if lavender isn't your thing, then
Yeah, not for everyone. Yeah.
there's an alternative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, terrific. And so another question too, because you mentioned earlier on in the way that you can assess your patients, through your intake and asking them questions and rating how they feel stress is showing up in their life, but also the labs that you have available, which I think is so interesting because these are really different from what people are probably seeing come back from standard medical practitioners. So what do you get to work with in that regard?
Yeah, so I order specialty functional medicine labs, and they are very different than your basic blood work. This basic blood work, people can go in, especially if they're younger, like in their 20s or 30s, most of the time their blood work is perfectly normal. They don't say anything of significance unless you got something significant, then you should know about, which is good. It's good to get your basic blood work, but you can get your basic blood work and come back perfectly normal, but you still feel crappy and tired and stressed, and that doesn't really help with that. So the labs that I look at specifically are addressing like how to optimize your body and mind. So some of the things I look at are food sensitivities, which obviously hugely impacts your mood and energy and all sorts of other functions in your body. And it's different. The food I call it sensitivities rather than allergies, because usually when people think of food allergies, they're thinking of the IgE reaction, which is the anaphylactic type of reaction, which most people, they usually know if they have those reactions from, because the onset is childhood typically. And they have like a life-threatening situation where their throat might swell up and they need an EpiPen to resolve the anaphylactic reaction. And so usually people know if they have those reactions, but there's these other types of reactions called IgG reactions, which are delayed reactions. They can develop later in adulthood. And because they're delayed, they're harder to figure out, because like something you ate 3 days ago could be affecting you now. And so it's not necessarily life-threatening situations that they're putting you in, but it's causing you disruption in the quality of your life, like digestive issues, headaches, fatigue, migraines, immune function, like heart health, like all of those things can make a difference in what you put in your body. So I look at food sensitivities through blood testing. I look at hormones and neurotransmitters, because that hugely impacts your mood and your cognitive functioning. So that's really helpful for people dealing with stress and anxiety, as well as adrenal functioning testing, which is your adrenals. For those in the listening, they are your little like adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys that secrete your stress hormone called cortisol, which is really important for you to have. But if you're overworking your adrenal glands, then you're overworking like all this cortisol shooting out, but eventually, your adrenals get really tired out and they can only shoot out so much cortisol. So they kind of slow down and are not functioning as well as they could be. So doing some adrenal testing is helpful to understand where your stress response is, how healthy or unhealthy it might be. And then another thing I look at is micronutrient testing, which is vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and antioxidants. And this is helpful because, one of the things I always say is like, I really don't like it when people are like, oh, I have this problem. What supplement would you recommend? And I was like, I don't know your whole situation and I'm not your doctor. You have to become a patient. And they're like, why can't you just recommend a supplement? And I'm like, I don't know what's going on in your body. And I don't know the full context of your situation. And I'd rather like not just guess at what I think might be helpful. I'd actually like to look at the blood work and know what your body's deficient in, so I can like recommend a supplement accordingly to what your body's specifically needing. Because, with anxiety and stress, there could be a lot of deficiencies that are contributing to that anxiety. It could be magnesium, which is a common thing. People are like, oh yeah, magnesium's great for anxiety, but maybe your magnesium levels are perfectly fine. But maybe it's like a vitamin D situation, or maybe it's B12 situation, or maybe it's something else that we haven't looked at. So let's treat the thing that's you're dealing with for your body specifically, rather than kind of guessing at it. So I think that's really helpful to just getting more insight into the body and understanding, there's a lot of variables that impact our stress levels and our mood. And there's labs that can help us identify, where can we adjust. It's not the only thing. I still recommend you got to work with like a professional, whether it's a therapist or counselor. That's important. You got to look at your nutrition. That's important, but that's just like a piece of the puzzle that we have to combine in combination with everything else.
Yes, I agree. I think that, and it's so interesting to me too. Then people start to list off all of the supplements that they're on because someone said this was good, and then this one, and then this one, and then they're on 6 to 8. Some
Yeah.
might be completely unnecessary, some maybe right hurting more than helping. And you don't really know what's having what impact on your health when you've got this whole assortment, this salad of supplements that you're taking.
Right.
So yeah, ideally, if you're eating, whole foods and as much plant-based, I mean, I'm an omnivore. I'm not saying everybody has to go vegan in order to be healthy. Everybody's body is different. But if you start with balanced nutrition and then address our own unique needs. And it's exciting too, with the way that genetic testing has come along. I mean, that can let us know what we might be predisposed to, not metabolize well or what have you, but it's so helpful to know what's actually going on, get that current situation assessed in our body. So it's great to see how many different tests are available now. I mean, you can really get a close look at all the different levers and switches. I like to think, I'm old school, like soundboard, and getting it all dialed in so that you've got that good baseline.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And again, like a supplement is not necessarily going to resolve the anxiety, but kind of like it goes back to my whole stance on pharmaceuticals. I don't want to give you like expect that this pill will magically solve all your problems. You got to do the deeper work, explore, your childhood and your past, and get complete about any like traumas you've been through, because that's usually at the source of a lot of anxiety too, is like you got to deal with that. So working with a trained professional rather than trying to figure it out in your head is really important.
Yes, because there's that busy mind, right? We can really get on that loop and not make any progress, just keep wearing a groove. And then that's that emotion or, mind space that we really can get stuck in. That's not healthy either.
Definitely. Yes.
So I love that you're bringing the conversation to corporations too. And I noticed that they are definitely paying attention. Burnout is becoming so much more common, unfortunately. I mean, they're becoming more aware, but the problem is still growing. Are there one or two key tips that you like to share with those groups when you're talking with them in the office space?
Yeah, I usually go do like a guided meditation or show him the breathing exercise, but also, think about like the things that cause them stress and have them like actually have an inquiry with the thoughts that they're having that are stressful for them, to just like notice the thoughts without judgment. Because it's like the thoughts are going to be there. We can't necessarily just like banish the thoughts away. You got to be able to interact with the thoughts in a way that aren't causing you the distress. And so like if you can like slow down your breathing so you can give your brain an opportunity to think more critically, you can ask yourself, like, is this worth the stress? Is this thought productive or helpful for what I'm trying to do or accomplish? What's more important, like being right about this situation or having my peace? It's like another example. So it's just like having an inquiry or questioning, like, is this really helpful or productive for me? And those stressful thoughts will come back, but it's just developing. That's why I always emphasize mindfulness. Is like mindfulness is to develop the practice of being present in the moment, because the thoughts are going to come and go and stress you out. But it's like when you can bring your attention back into the present and you can just like be with the thought, recognize and acknowledge it, but then just let it go and bring your attention back to the focus. It's like exercising a muscle, but your brain is the muscle. It's not actually a muscle, but it's like we're exercising a muscle. Like the example I always say is we need to exercise our body to be healthy and fit, but it's an ongoing thing. You can't just exercise a couple times and expect to be healthy and fit for the rest of your life. It's an ongoing thing, and it might be challenging, especially when you're starting in something new, a new exercise or a new workout routine. It's going to be uncomfortable and not easy to start. It'll be extra sore, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more benefits you're going to reap. And the same goes for mindfulness. That's what I always emphasize, is that, it's not, I know a lot of people resist. They're like, it's not for me. I don't like sitting there. I could be doing something else. And you just got to get that it's going to be uncomfortable and challenging. And that's the point. Like learning a new exercise, it's not easy right off the bat. You're not a natural swimmer the moment you hit the water. So same goes with meditation. You got to like give it a chance. And you got to exercise your muscle of developing the practice of getting back into the present moment. Because again, your mind is going to constantly wander off or stress you out. And yeah, you got to develop the practice and the muscle of becoming present in the moment. So those thoughts aren't causing that stress in your body.
Yes, you are singing my song. Absolutely. I agree 110%. And just like there are different exercises that people enjoy, there are different forms of meditation.
Yes,
so, the
absolutely.
first one is like, you just want to climb the wall because you can't sit still and think about your breath anymore. Try a guided meditation, right? There's so many available on YouTube.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law, I blew her mind when she discovered sleeping meditations, right? So now she puts one on every night before she goes to sleep, and it's transformed her rest.
Yes.
So big win all around. Because we know how important sleep is. So yeah, try different times of the day. Just be willing to give it a try. And I find that too, that as we keep coming back to that mindfulness practice, it makes it so much easier to get curious about the thoughts that we're having and to kind of examine. And it literally brings us out of that stress response. It brings us from the amygdala into that more considered thought, the prefrontal cortex. And we're like, why are we so triggered right now? What is going on for me? Totally changes the outcome. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's so empowering.
Yes.
Awesome. I love it. I love that, you're doing your work and getting the message out there and bringing I'm excited from my own experience when I went back and studied science, these 5 years ago, after not wanting anything to do with it 20 some years ago, how much we've learned. And I'm excited to see how science is validating some of these old practices and traditions that have worked for thousands of years. And so I think that you're right on that line of synergizing all of this. And it's so exciting. So thanks for doing the work that you do.
Well, thank you. And thank you for that point, because I think a lot of people think naturopathic doctors don't like science, and it's like the opposite of that. It's like, we love science. I love evidence. And these things work. What I do works. So that's why I recommend the things that I do. So yeah.
Yes. And so in addition to the breathing practice that we're going to find a link for, you have a little guide that you're making available too to our listeners.
Yes, definitely. Oh, actually, yeah, because that breathing exercise, I have the instructions in my free stress guide. So there's the written guide, but then there's a link to the video in the stress guide. So that way they can access it that way.
Perfect. All right. So we'll have the link to that in the show notes, and you can find all that information about Dr. Alice if you want to get connected. And you also host a podcast and interview show yourself.
Yes. Happy Talks. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for taking the time to join me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for tuning in today. Check out the show notes for any links we mentioned. To learn more about living life with less stress and more flow, visit happifiedlife.com. And if you found value in today's episode, make sure you subscribe to catch the next one and leave a review to help fellow pod surfers find Happified. Until next time, keep on shining.